The flames danced against the night sky, illuminating the small town of Republic, Missouri, with an unnatural glow as the general store burned with a ferocity that sent sparks flying like angry fireflies. Nathan Calloway had just ridden into town after a long cattle drive, his body aching for rest, when the screams pierced the air and changed the course of his life forever. A woman's voice called out from the second floor of the burning building. Desperate and fading, and without a second thought, Nathan threw himself from his horse toward the inferno that everyone else was running away from. Republic, nestled in Greene County, Missouri, had seen its fair share of troubles in 1876, but nothing quite like the blaze that now threatened to consume not only Peterson's general store, but potentially the entire main street if the wind picked up. The townspeople formed a bucket brigade, passing water from the nearby well to douse the neighboring buildings, but the store itself was beyond saving. Marshal Thompson yelled for everyone to stay back, declaring it a lost cause. "There's still someone in there." Nathan shouted, pointing to the second-floor window where he'd seen movement. A flash of auburn hair and a pale face had appeared briefly before disappearing back into the smoke. "Ain't nobody going in there, son," the marshal replied, grabbing Nathan's arm. "That building's about to collapse." Nathan pulled away, his eyes fixed on the window. "I heard her call for help." Before anyone could stop him, Nathan pulled his bandana up over his nose and mouth and ran toward the building, ignoring the shouts behind him. The heat hit him like a physical force as he approached the front door, which hung partially open, flames licking at its frame. He ducked low. Remembering what his father had taught him about fire, the air was clearer near the floor. Inside, the store was a maze of burning shelves and falling debris. The staircase to the second floor stood at the back, partially intact but surrounded by flames. Nathan took a deep breath through his bandana and dashed through the fire, his coat catching sparks that he frantically patted out as he reached the stairs. They creaked ominously under his weight but held as he climbed. The second floor was Peterson's living quarters, now filled with thick, choking smoke. Nathan dropped to his hands and knees, crawling forward, eyes stinging and watering as he called out, "Hello, where are you?" A weak cough came from the far corner where a small bedroom was located. Nathan made his way toward it, navigating around fallen beams and burning furniture. The door to the bedroom was jammed, and he threw his shoulder against it repeatedly until it gave way. There, huddled by the window, was a young woman. Her face was smudged with soot, her dress singed in places, and her breathing labored. She looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "I'm here to help," Nathan said, extending his hand. "Can you walk?" She shook her head, pointing to her ankle, which was swollen and trapped beneath a fallen bookcase. "I tried to move it, but I can't," she gasped between coughs. Nathan quickly assessed the situation. The bookcase wasn't terribly heavy, but her injury would make it impossible for her to walk out on her own. He crouched down and heaved the bookcase off her ankle, wincing at her cry of pain. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms. "Hold on tight," he instructed, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face against his shoulder. The journey back was far more perilous than the way in. The fire had spread rapidly, consuming more of the building. The staircase groaned and shifted under their combined weight, and halfway down, a step gave way beneath Nathan's foot. He stumbled but managed to regain his balance, tightening his grip on the woman in his arms. The ground floor was now an inferno, the path to the door all but blocked by flames. Nathan turned in a circle, searching desperately for an exit. The woman lifted her head and pointed weakly to a window on the side of the building. "There," she whispered hoarsely. "It leads to the alley." Nathan carried her toward it, kicking out the glass and frame with his boot. He set her down briefly on a countertop that wasn't yet ablaze, shrugged off his coat, and draped it over the windowsill to cover the jagged glass that remained. Then he lifted her again and climbed carefully through the window, dropping several feet to the alley below and absorbing the impact with his knees to protect her from the jolt. Just as they cleared the building, A tremendous crash sounded behind them as a section of the roof collapsed. Nathan staggered forward, carrying the woman away from the building and toward the crowd that had gathered at the end of the alley. As he emerged into the street, a cheer went up from the onlookers. Dr. Wilson pushed through the crowd. "Bring her to my office, quickly," he directed, leading the way across the street. Nathan followed, still carrying the woman who had fallen silent in his arms. Only when he laid her gently on the examination table in the doctor's office did he get a clear look at her face, cleaned of some of the soot by her tears. She was beautiful, with delicate features and deep green eyes that now fluttered open to meet his gaze. "You saved my life," she whispered. "Thank you. What's your name?" Nathan asked, suddenly aware that he'd risked everything for a stranger. "Hannah," she replied weakly. "Hannah Fletcher. I was staying in Mr. Peterson's spare room while looking for work in town." "I'm Nathan Calloway," he said, before a fit of coughing overtook him, and the doctor firmly ushered him outside to get some fresh air and have his own burns attended to. As the town doctor tended to Nathan's burns and scrapes on the porch of his office, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about the woman he'd just rescued. There was something about her eyes, the way they'd looked at him with such gratitude, and something else he couldn't quite name. "You're lucky, son," Dr. Wilson said as he wrapped a bandage around Nathan's forearm where a burn had blistered the skin. "Another minute in there and we'd be burying you both." "How is she?" Nathan asked, wincing as the doctor applied a salve to his other burns. "Miss Fletcher." "She's got a sprained ankle, some smoke in her lungs and minor burns, but she'll recover fully with rest. She's asking for you, by the way." Nathan felt a strange flutter in his chest at this news. "She has family in town," Dr. Wilson shook his head. "From what I gather, she's alone. Came in on the stage last week looking for work. Peterson was letting her stay in his spare room until she got settled." The doctor paused. "With the store gone and Peterson headed to St. Louis to stay with his daughter, I'm not sure what she'll do now." Nathan found himself offering before he'd fully thought it through. "I've got a room at the hotel. She can have it while I find somewhere else." The doctor gave him a knowing look. "That's mighty generous, though perhaps ask the lady first." When Nathan returned to the examination room, Hannah was sitting up, her ankle bandaged and elevated on a stool. Someone had brought her a clean dress, and she'd wiped most of the soot from her face. Her auburn hair, though tangled and singed in places, caught the lamplight like burnished copper. "There's my hero," she said with a small smile that didn't quite mask the pain in her eyes. "The doctor says I have you to thank for still being in this world." Nathan shifted uncomfortably under her gaze, suddenly awkward. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Hannah said firmly, reaching out to touch his bandaged arm. "They wouldn't. Everyone else was running away from that fire. You ran into it." Her touch sent a jolt through him that had nothing to do with his injuries. Nathan cleared his throat. "I heard the doctor say you don't have a place to stay now." Hannah's face fell. "Yes, that's true. Everything I owned was in that room. I don't have much money, but I suppose I could try to find work in another town." "Stay," Nathan said, surprising himself with the intensity in his voice. He softened his tone. "What I mean is, I have a room at the hotel. You're welcome to it while you recover and figure things out. I can bunk with a friend." Hannah studied him for a long moment, her expression guarded. "Why would you do that for me? You don't know me." "I just pulled you from a burning building," Nathan said with a slight smile. "Seems a waste to let you leave town right after." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I don't make a habit of accepting charity, Mr. Calloway. It's not charity, it's—" He searched for the right word. "Neighborly?" "We're not neighbors," she pointed out. "We could be," he replied. "Republic's a good town. I think you'd like it here once you get to know it better." Hannah considered this, then nodded slowly. "All right, but only until I find work and can pay my own way. And I'll find some way to repay you for your kindness." "Deal," Nathan said, offering his hand. When her slender fingers touched his calloused palm, he felt that strange flutter again. Something about this woman called to him in a way he couldn't explain. As he helped her to her feet and supported her weight as she hopped on one foot, he realized with some surprise that he was glad the fire had brought her into his life, despite the circumstances. Little did either of them know that the flames that had nearly claimed Hannah's life had ignited something else entirely, something that would burn far longer than any fire ever could. The following morning, Nathan escorted Hannah to the hotel, supporting her as she hobbled alongside him with the aid of a crutch Dr. Wilson had provided. The town was buzzing with activity as people gathered to survey the damage from the previous night's fire. The general store was nothing but a charred skeleton, its blackened beams reaching toward the sky like accusatory fingers. Several people stopped them along the way, congratulating Nathan on his heroism and welcoming Hannah to Republic, despite the unfortunate circumstances. "It seems you're quite the local hero," Hannah remarked as they made their way down the boardwalk. Nathan shook his head. "I'm no hero, just happened to be in the right place." "The right place at the right time with the courage to act when others wouldn't," Hannah corrected him gently. She paused their progress and turned to face him fully. "I never properly thanked you last night. I was too overwhelmed, but I owe you my life, Nathan Calloway, and that's not a debt I take lightly." The intensity in her green eyes made Nathan's heart skip a beat. "No debt between us," he insisted. "I'm just glad I was there." The Summit Hotel was the finest establishment in Republic, a 3-story building with a wide porch and polished banisters. Nathan had splurged on a room there after months on the trail, wanting a few nights of comfort before heading back to his small ranch outside of town. Now he guided Hannah up the steps and into the ornate lobby, where Mr. Hargrove, the proprietor, greeted them with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Miss Fletcher, we're all relieved to see you're all right," Mr. Hargrove said, his bushy eyebrows raised. Word of the fire spread through town faster than the flames themselves. "Thank you, Mr. Hargrove," Hannah replied with a polite nod. "Mr. Calloway has kindly offered me his room while I recover." Hargrove's eyebrows climbed even higher. "Has he indeed? And where will you be staying, Mr. Calloway?" "I'll be bunking with Tom Wilson out at his place," Nathan explained, referring to the doctor's son who'd been a friend since childhood. "Just until Miss Fletcher gets back on her feet." "I see," Hargrove said, though his expression suggested he saw perhaps more than Nathan intended. "Well, Miss Fletcher, if there's anything you need during your stay, don't hesitate to ask. The hotel laundress, Mrs. Peavy, might have some clothing that would fit you given the circumstances." "That's very kind, thank you," Hannah said, her cheeks coloring slightly at the reminder of her situation. Nathan led her to his room on the 2nd floor, a modest but comfortable space with a large bed, a washstand, and a small writing desk by the window that overlooked Main Street. He set her small bag of borrowed items, a nightgown, toiletries, and a change of clothes donated by the doctor's wife on the bed. "It's not much, but it's clean and quiet," Nathan said, suddenly feeling self-conscious about the few personal items he'd left scattered around: his razor on the washstand, a book on the nightstand, his spare boots by the door. Hannah moved to the window and looked out at the town. From this vantage point, she could see the remains of the general store where a few men were already picking through the debris. "It's perfect," she said softly. "I can't thank you enough." An awkward silence fell between them. Nathan was acutely aware that they were alone in a hotel room, a highly improper situation for an unmarried man and woman. He cleared his throat. "I should let you rest. Dr. Wilson said to stay off that ankle as much as possible for a few days." Hannah turned from the window, studying him with those penetrating green eyes. "What do you do, Mr. Calloway? For work, I mean." "I have a small cattle ranch about 5 miles west of town," he explained. "Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I just got back from driving a small herd to the railhead in Kansas City." "A cattleman," she said with a hint of a smile. "That explains the confident horsemanship I glimpsed before last night." Nathan was surprised she'd noticed him before the fire. "And you?" What kind of work were you looking for in Republic? Hannah's expression clouded slightly. I was a schoolteacher back in St. Louis. I came here hoping for a fresh start, away from. She paused. Away from memories. Nathan sensed there was much more to that story, but he didn't press. Everyone had parts of their past they preferred not to discuss. As it happens, Republic's been looking for a schoolteacher. The last one, Miss Winters, got married and moved to California with her husband last month. Hope flared in Hannah's eyes. Truly, do you think they'd consider me given my unconventional arrival? I'd say pulling you from that fire has made you the talk of the town. I can speak with Mayor Ellis about it if you'd like. He oversees the school board. I would be most grateful, Hannah said, her expression brightening considerably. Teaching is my passion. To have the opportunity to continue here would be, well, it would turn this misfortune into a blessing. Nathan found himself captivated by the transformation in her face when she spoke about teaching. The pain and weariness seemed to lift, replaced by genuine enthusiasm. Consider it done, he promised. I'll speak to him today. As Nathan turned to leave, Hannah called after him. Nathan! It was the first time she'd used his given name without the formal Mr. Calloway, and the sound of it on her lips made him pause. Why are you doing all this for me? He considered the question carefully. The truth was, he wasn't entirely sure himself. There was something about her that drew him in, something beyond her obvious beauty or the circumstances of their meeting. Let's just say I believe in helping neighbors, he finally replied with a small smile. Even new ones. Hannah's answering smile warmed him more thoroughly than any fire could. Then I'm very glad to be your new neighbor, Nathan Calloway. As he closed the door behind him, Nathan knew with sudden clarity that his life had irrevocably changed the moment he'd heard her voice calling for help through the flames. Over the next few days, Hannah's presence in Republic caused quite a stir. The story of her dramatic rescue had spread far beyond the town limits, with newspapers as far as Springfield running articles about the brave cowboy who'd charged into a burning building to save a trapped young woman. Nathan found himself uncomfortable with the attention, while Hannah bore it with graceful humility, thanking those who expressed concern for her well-being while deflecting questions about her past. True to his word, Nathan had spoken with Mayor Ellis about the vacant teaching position. The mayor, a portly man with a fondness for cigars and political expediency, had recognized the potential advantages of hiring the woman whose rescue had brought positive attention to their town. A qualified teacher with experience in St. Louis, you say? Mayor Ellis had mused, puffing on his cigar. And she's already the talk of the county. Yes, I think the school board will be quite interested in meeting Miss Fletcher once she's recovered sufficiently. By the end of the week, Hannah had been invited to interview with the school board, despite her ankle still being too tender for her to walk without a crutch. Nathan escorted her to the town hall, where the board members consisting of the mayor, the Reverend Dr. Wilson, and two prominent local farmers waited to assess her suitability. You don't need to wait, Hannah told Nathan as they reached the town hall steps. This could take some time. I don't mind, he replied, offering his arm to help her up the steps. Besides, I need to stop by the mercantile for supplies before heading back to the ranch. The truth was, Nathan had been finding excuses to remain in town longer than necessary. He'd visited Hannah daily, bringing her meals from the hotel restaurant and keeping her company during her convalescence. They'd spent hours in conversation, discovering shared interests in literature and music. Hannah had revealed that she played the piano and sang, while Nathan had reluctantly admitted to knowing a few chords on the guitar, though he claimed to play poorly enough to frighten the cattle. Their easy rapport had surprised them both. Despite the unusual circumstances of their meeting and the brevity of their acquaintance, there was an undeniable connection between them, a sense of recognition that neither could fully explain. As Nathan helped Hannah navigate the town hall steps, he was acutely aware of the softness of her hand on his arm and the delicate floral scent that now accompanied her presence a vast improvement over the smoke and ash that had clung to her when they first met. Mrs. Peavy, the hotel laundress, had indeed found clothing for Hannah, and she now wore a simple blue dress that complemented her auburn hair, which she'd managed to trim evenly despite the fire damage. "Nervous?" Nathan asked as they reached the top of the steps. Hannah took a steadying breath. "A little. This position means a great deal to me. If I don't secure it, I'm not sure what I'll do next." "You'll impress them," Nathan assured her. "Just be yourself." Hannah smiled up at him gratefully. "Thank you for your confidence and for everything else." As they entered the town hall, Nathan reluctantly released her arm. "I'll be at Donovan's Mercantile when you're finished. Good luck, though I doubt you'll need it." 3 hours later, Nathan was nursing a coffee at the cafe next to the Mercantile, having long since completed his shopping when Hannah appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with excitement despite the evident fatigue in her posture. He stood immediately, pulling out a chair for her. "Well, they offered me the position," she announced, her green eyes sparkling. "I start in 2 weeks once the new term begins. They're even offering accommodation. There's a small cottage behind the schoolhouse that comes with the position." "Hannah, that's wonderful." Nathan exclaimed, genuinely delighted for her. "I knew they'd recognize your qualifications. They were particularly interested in my musical background," she confided. "Apparently, the town has been without musical instruction since the previous teacher had no such talents. They've offered to provide a piano for both the school and my cottage. This calls for a celebration," Nathan declared, signaling to the waitress. "2 slices of Mrs. Landry's apple pie, please, and fresh coffee." As they enjoyed their impromptu celebration, Hannah grew more animated than Nathan had yet seen her, describing her plans for the school and her excitement about working with the children of Republic. Watching her speak so passionately, Nathan felt a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the hot coffee. "You know," he said when she paused for breath, "I think that fire might have been the best thing to happen to this town in a long while." Hannah tilted her head quizzically. "How do you figure that?" "Well, we're getting a new general store. Peterson's son-in-law is coming from St. Louis to rebuild with modern fixtures this time. The town's getting good press from the heroic rescue story." He gave her a teasing wink. "And most importantly, Republic is gaining an excellent teacher who might never have stayed if circumstances had been different." "And what about you?" Hannah asked quietly. "What has the fire brought you?" Nathan met her gaze steadily, suddenly aware that they had reached a pivotal moment. "It brought me you," he said simply. Hannah's cheeks colored beautifully, but she didn't look away. "Is that a good thing, Nathan Calloway?" "The best thing that's happened to me in a very long time," he replied honestly. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first night. Nathan reached across the table and gently took her hand in his. Hannah didn't pull away. "Would you allow me to call on you properly?" he asked. "Once you're settled in your new cottage, of course." Hannah's smile was radiant. "I would like that very much." As they sat in the small cafe, hands entwined on the table between them, neither could have imagined how completely their lives would intertwine in the months to come. All because of a fire that had nearly claimed Hannah's life, but had instead given them both a new beginning. The 2 weeks before Hannah began her teaching position passed quickly. The town rallied around her, with many residents donating household items, books, and clothing to replace what she had lost in the fire. Mrs. Landry from the cafe provided home-cooked meals. Mr. Hargrove refused to accept payment for her extended stay at the hotel, and several of the town's women helped prepare the teacher's cottage for her arrival. Nathan had returned to his ranch but rode into town every other day, ostensibly to check on Hannah's recovery. Though they both knew his visits had become something they both looked forward to with increasing anticipation. They would walk together through the town, Hannah gradually relying less on her crutch as her ankle healed, and Nathan would tell her about the history of Republic and the surrounding countryside. This land was Cherokee territory not so long ago, he explained one afternoon as they sat on a bench in the small town square, watching children play. My father came here in '45, just after Missouri became a state. He always said we were borrowing this land, not owning it. Your father sounds like a wise man, Hannah observed. Is he still living? Nathan's expression grew somber. No, we lost him to pneumonia 5 winters ago. My mother passed when I was just a boy. It's been just me on the ranch since Pa died. Hannah placed her hand gently over his. I'm sorry. It must be lonely sometimes. It can be, he admitted, though less so lately. He gave her a meaningful look that made her cheeks flush. Tell me about your family, Nathan prompted, curious about the parts of her life she still rarely mentioned. Hannah was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. My parents died when I was 16, a steamboat accident on the Mississippi. I was taken in by my father's cousin in St. Louis, who saw to my education and helped me secure my teaching position there. She paused. I was engaged briefly last year. This was new information, and Nathan felt an unexpected pang of jealousy. What happened? He asked carefully. He was a banker, well respected in St. Louis society. Our engagement was announced in the newspaper. Her voice grew softer. 3 days later, a woman came to see me, his wife from Cincinnati, with 2 small children in tow. He had another life, another family he'd never mentioned. Nathan's jealousy instantly transformed into outrage on her behalf. The scoundrel, the scandal was, significant, Hannah continued. I broke the engagement immediately, of course, but the damage to my reputation was done. There were whispers, rumors that I had known all along. The school board asked me to resign, citing moral considerations. Her laugh was hollow, as if I had been the one living a lie. So that's why you came to Republic, Nathan realized. For a fresh start, Hannah nodded. I couldn't stay in St. Louis. Everywhere I went, I saw pity or judgment in people's eyes. I chose Republic because it was far enough away that the scandal wouldn't follow, but close enough that I could verify my teaching credentials easily. And then you nearly died in a fire your first week here, Nathan said grimly. Not exactly the fresh start you envisioned. Oh, I don't know, Hannah replied, a genuine smile replacing her melancholy expression. It introduced me to the most honorable man I've ever met. Perhaps the fire was exactly the fresh start I needed. Nathan felt a surge of affection so strong it nearly took his breath away. Without thinking, he leaned forward and brushed a soft kiss against her cheek. Thank you for trusting me with your story, he murmured. Hannah's eyes widened at the unexpected gesture, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her face slightly, bringing their lips mere inches apart. For a breathless moment, Nathan thought she might close the distance between them, but a shout from across the square broke the spell. Miss Fletcher, Miss Fletcher! A young boy of about 10 came running toward them, waving a piece of paper. It was Tommy Wilson, the doctor's youngest son. Pa says the piano for the schoolhouse arrived at the depot this afternoon. They're bringing it over tomorrow morning. Hannah straightened, her professional demeanor sliding back into place, though a becoming blush still colored her cheeks. That's wonderful news, Tommy. Thank you for letting me know. Pa says you're to come to dinner tonight to celebrate, and Mr. Calloway too if he's still in town, Tommy continued, grinning at them both. Please tell your father we'd be delighted, Hannah replied with a warm smile. As Tommy ran off to deliver the message, Nathan and Hannah exchanged glances, both aware that something significant had nearly happened between them and that their relationship was shifting into something deeper. I should get you back to the hotel, Nathan said, standing and offering her his arm. You'll want to rest before dinner with the Wilsons. Hannah took his arm, and as they walked back toward the hotel, her grip tightened almost imperceptibly. Nathan, she said softly, I'm glad the fire brought us together despite everything. Nathan covered her hand with his own. So am I, Hannah, more than I can say. The next day, Hannah moved into the teacher's cottage, a snug 1-bedroom structure behind the schoolhouse. Nathan brought his wagon to transport the few belongings she had acquired, and several townspeople arrived to help her settle in, including Mrs. Wilson, who brought curtains she had sewn, and Mayor Ellis's wife, who arrived with a basket of preserves and baked goods. By midday, the promised piano had been installed in the cottage's small parlor, a beautiful instrument that Hannah approached with reverent fingers. "It's magnificent," she breathed, running her hand along the polished wood. "Will you play something for us?" Mrs. Ellis requested, and the small gathering of women murmured their agreement. Hannah sat at the bench and after a moment's hesitation began to play. The melody that filled the cottage was both joyful and tender, her fingers dancing across the keys with practiced ease. Nathan, who had been helping position furniture in the bedroom, was drawn to the parlor by the music. He stood in the doorway, transfixed as Hannah's whole countenance seemed to transform. Illuminated from within by the joy of her playing. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Hannah looked up, her eyes seeking Nathan's, and the connection that passed between them was almost tangible. "That was beautiful," he told her later after the well-wishers had departed and they were alone in her new home. "What was it, Chopin?" she replied. "It's always been a favorite of mine." She hesitated, then asked, "Would you stay for supper? It's nothing fancy, but Mrs. Wilson brought a chicken pie and I'd welcome the company for my first meal in my new home." "I'd be honored," Nathan replied, removing his hat. "Though I should probably stable my horse for the night if I'm staying that late." "Of course," Hannah agreed. "The school has a small stable for visiting parents. You're welcome to use it." As Nathan tended to his horse, he reflected on how quickly Hannah had become essential to his happiness. In the short time since he'd pulled her from the burning building, she had come to occupy his thoughts constantly. He found himself looking for reasons to be in town, planning his days around the possibility of seeing her, even for a few minutes. When he returned to the cottage, he found Hannah had set the table with care, using the mismatched dishes donated by various townspeople to create a cheerful, if eclectic, setting. A small vase of wildflowers served as a centerpiece, and she had lit candles despite the early hour, creating a warm, intimate atmosphere. They talked easily through the meal, sharing stories of their childhoods and discovering more common ground. Nathan told her about his dreams for expanding his ranch, perhaps breeding horses as well as cattle. Hannah spoke of her plans for the school, her hopes of introducing music and literature to children who might otherwise have limited exposure to the arts. "You're going to transform this town," Nathan said admiringly. "These children are fortunate to have you as their teacher." Hannah smiled, pleased by his confidence in her. "I hope to make a difference. After what happened in St. Louis, I wasn't sure I'd have the opportunity to teach again. I feel as though I've been given a second chance, in more ways than one." As the evening progressed, they moved to the small settee near the piano. The conversation flowed seamlessly between them, comfortable silences interspersed with moments of shared laughter or thoughtful discussion. It was during one such silence that Nathan found himself watching the way the candlelight played across Hannah's features, highlighting the copper in her hair and the depth of her green eyes. "Hannah," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "I know we've known each other only briefly, but I feel as though I've been waiting for you all my life." Her eyes widened slightly at his declaration, but she didn't look away. "I feel it too," she admitted softly. "From the moment you carried me from that fire, something changed inside me. It's as though I recognized something in you that I've always been searching for." Nathan reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. "May I court you properly, Hannah Fletcher? I want to do this right." Hannah's smile was luminous in the candlelight. "I would like that very much, Nathan Calloway." With gentle reverence, Nathan leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a tender first kiss. Hannah responded with a sweetness that made his heart soar, her free hand coming to rest lightly against his chest. When they separated, both were breathless, gazing at each other with wonder and dawning joy. "I should go," Nathan said reluctantly, aware of propriety despite the emotions surging within him. "You begin teaching tomorrow and you need your rest." Hannah walked him to the door, their hands still linked. "Will I see you soon?" "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," he promised, stealing one more brief kiss before stepping out into the cool evening air. "Good night, Hannah." "Good night, Nathan," she replied, her voice carrying a warmth that stayed with him long after he had ridden home to his ranch under a canopy of stars. The next morning, Hannah stood nervously before the schoolhouse, watching as children of various ages arrived for the first day of the new term. Parents accompanied the youngest ones, eyeing the new teacher with curious but friendly expressions. Hannah greeted each child by name, having memorized the school roster provided by Mayor Ellis, and welcomed them into the freshly cleaned and decorated classroom. 26 students ranging in age from 6 to 16 filled the schoolhouse, their faces reflecting emotions from excitement to trepidation. Hannah took a deep breath and rang the small bell on her desk, signaling the official start of the school day and her new life in Republic. "Good morning, children," she began with a warm smile. "I'm Miss Fletcher, and I'm honored to be your new teacher. We're going to learn wonderful things together this year." As she looked out at the sea of young faces, Hannah felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where she belonged, doing what she loved. And for the first time since the scandal in St. Louis, she felt hopeful about her future, a future that now seemed inextricably linked with a certain brave cattleman who had risked everything to save a stranger from the flames. The first few weeks of Hannah's tenure as Republic schoolteacher passed in a blur of activity. The children quickly warmed to her engaging teaching style and genuine interest in their individual progress. Parents reported that their children were coming home excited about learning, even those who had previously resisted education. Hannah introduced music lessons, teaching the children simple songs and allowing those who showed particular aptitude to try their hand at the piano she had convinced the school board to move from her cottage to the schoolhouse. She organized a small library corner with books donated by townspeople, and initiated a weekly poetry recitation that quickly became a favorite activity among many of the students. Meanwhile, her courtship with Nathan blossomed. True to his word, he called on her regularly, bringing small gifts, wildflowers from the prairie, a book of poetry he'd ordered from Kansas City, honey from the hives kept by a neighbor at the edge of his property. On Sundays after church, they would often take long walks together or ride in his wagon to picnic spots in the surrounding countryside, always accompanied by at least one of the Wilson children as a proper chaperone, though the children tactfully gave them some semblance of privacy. As autumn painted the Missouri landscape in vivid hues of gold and crimson, Nathan invited Hannah to visit his ranch for the first time. Mrs. Wilson agreed to accompany them as chaperone, bringing along her daughter Emily, who was one of Hannah's students. The Calloway ranch was modest but well-maintained, situated in a picturesque valley with a creek running through it. The main house was a solid 2-story structure built of local stone and timber, with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. A large barn, several outbuildings, and corrals completed the property, with cattle grazing in the distance and a small orchard to one side of the house. "It's beautiful," Hannah exclaimed as Nathan helped her down from the wagon. "I can see why you love it here." "My father built this house with his own hands," Nathan told her proudly. "Added the 2nd story when I was about 12, said a proper home should have room to grow into." He gave her a tour of the property, showing her the improvements he'd made since inheriting it and explaining his plans for the future. Mrs. Wilson and Emily followed at a discreet distance, the older woman smiling knowingly at the obvious affection between the young couple. "And this," Nathan said, leading Hannah to a fenced pasture where several horses grazed, "is my latest project. I'm breeding quarter horses. That mare there, the chestnut with the blaze, she's expecting a foal in the spring." Hannah watched the horses with evident delight. "They're magnificent." "Do you ride them all?" most of them. Would you like to learn to ride? I have a gentle gelding that would be perfect for a beginner. I'd love that, Hannah replied enthusiastically, though I suspect I'll make a rather comical sight at first. Nathan laughed. We'll have you riding like a natural in no time. They returned to the house, where Nathan had prepared a simple but hearty meal with the help of Mrs. Parker, a widow from town who came twice a week to cook and clean for him. After they ate, Nathan showed Hannah the parlor where a small upright piano stood against one wall. It was my mother's, he explained, noting Hannah's surprised expression. She taught me to play a little, though I haven't touched it in years. May I? Hannah asked, gesturing to the instrument. Please, Nathan encouraged her. It probably needs tuning, but… Hannah sat at the bench and played a few exploratory notes, then launched into a lively folk tune that had Mrs. Wilson and Emily clapping along. The sound of music filled the house, bringing life to rooms that had been too quiet for too long. When Hannah finished playing, she turned to find Nathan watching her with such tenderness that her breath caught. Your mother would be pleased to know her piano is being played again, she said softly. She would have liked you very much, he replied, his voice husky with emotion. The day passed too quickly, and as the afternoon light began to wane, they reluctantly prepared to return to town. As Nathan helped Hannah into the wagon, he held her hand a moment longer than necessary. I'd like you to visit again, he said. Often. I'd like that too, Hannah replied, her eyes conveying much more than her simple words, on the ride back to Republic with Mrs. Wilson and Emily engaged in their own conversation in the back of the wagon. Hannah and Nathan sat side by side on the driver's bench, their shoulders touching. Neither spoke much, content in each other's company and the shared understanding of where their relationship was heading. As autumn deepened into winter, Hannah became an integral part of Republic's community. She organized a Christmas pageant that showcased her students' musical talents and brought the town together in celebration. She started an adult literacy class 2 evenings a week, teaching several of the town's adults, including 2 of Nathan's ranch hands, to read and write. And she continued to court Nathan Calloway, falling more deeply in love with him as the weeks passed. For his part, Nathan found himself restructuring his entire life around Hannah. He hired additional help at the ranch so he could spend more time in town. He attended church regularly for the first time since his father's death, sitting proudly beside Hannah in the pew. He even joined the town council when a position opened, taking a more active role in the community that was now precious to him because she was part of it. Their courtship progressed with proper decorum but undeniable passion. Stolen kisses on Hannah's porch after escorting her home from various social events. Long conversations by the fire in her cottage, always with the door open, and a neighbor's child ostensibly studying in the corner as chaperone. And increasingly frank discussions about their shared future made it clear to everyone in Republic that a wedding announcement was likely in the near future. As Christmas approached, Nathan spent more time in town than at his ranch, often staying at the hotel so he could escort Hannah to various holiday festivities. The townspeople had embraced them as a couple, and invitations to dinners and gatherings flowed freely. It was after one such dinner at the mayor's home, as Nathan walked Hannah back to her cottage through gently falling snow, that he finally found the courage to speak what had been in his heart for months. Do you realize, he said, his breath visible in the cold December air, that it's been exactly 4 months since the fire? Hannah squeezed his arm where her hand rested in the crook of his elbow. 4 months that have changed my life completely. They paused under the bare branches of an elm tree, the snow creating a lacy pattern against the night sky above them. Nathan turned to face Hannah, taking both her hands in his. I never expected to find you, Hannah Fletcher. I certainly never expected to find you in a burning building. His attempt at humor was betrayed by the emotion thickening his voice. But now that I have found you, I can't imagine my life without you. Hannah's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she watched him reach into his coat pocket and withdraw a small box. "I love you, Hannah," Nathan said, dropping to one knee in the snow before her. "I think I've loved you since the moment I heard your voice calling through the flames. Would you do me the very great honor of becoming my wife?" He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It was my mother's," he explained. "My father gave it to me before he died, said I should save it for the woman who captured my heart the way my mother captured his." Hannah gazed down at him, her tears now flowing freely. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes, Nathan Calloway, I will marry you. I love you with all my heart." Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms. Their kiss was deep and tender, a promise of all the years to come. When they finally parted, both were breathless and grinning foolishly at each other. "When?" Nathan asked simply. "Spring," Hannah replied without hesitation. "When your mare's foal is born and the wildflowers return." "I've always dreamed of being a spring bride." "Spring it is," Nathan agreed, sealing the promise with another kiss before escorting his fiancée the rest of the way home, both of them walking on air despite the deepening snow beneath their feet. The engagement of Nathan Calloway and Hannah Fletcher was announced in church the following Sunday, to the surprise of absolutely no one in Republic. Congratulations poured in, along with offers to help with wedding preparations. Hannah's students were particularly excited, the younger girls dreaming of being flower girls and the older ones sighing romantically over their teacher's love story. As winter settled over Missouri, bringing snow and ice that sometimes made travel between town and the ranch difficult, Nathan worked tirelessly to prepare his home for his bride. He refurbished the second bedroom that had been his parents', buying new furnishings from the newly rebuilt general store and ordering special items from catalogs to surprise Hannah. He repainted the interior of the house, fixed the loose boards on the porch, and even planted rose bushes that would bloom in time for their wedding, carefully protecting the dormant plants from the winter cold. Hannah, meanwhile, continued teaching while also preparing for her new life as a rancher's wife. She learned to make preserves from Mrs. Wilson, studied basic veterinary care with Dr. Wilson, and spent every available moment with Nathan, riding the gentle gelding he had promised to teach her on, helping with light ranch chores and planning their future together. They decided to marry in late April, when the wildflowers would be in full bloom, and before the summer heat made outdoor celebrations uncomfortable. The ceremony would be held in the church, followed by a reception on the grounds of the schoolhouse where there was room for the entire town to celebrate. As the winter months passed, their love deepened and matured. They learned each other's strengths and weaknesses, discovered the small habits that endeared them to one another, and occasionally had the minor disagreements that helped them understand how to communicate more effectively. Through it all, their commitment never wavered. If anything, the occasional challenge only strengthened their resolve to build a life together. One particularly cold January day, a blizzard swept through the region, dropping several feet of snow and making roads impassable. Nathan had been in town when the storm hit, staying at the hotel rather than risking the journey back to the ranch. When the worst of the blizzard had passed, he made his way through the snow-covered streets to check on Hannah. He found her cottage cold, the fire having gone out overnight. Hannah was huddled under blankets, pale and shivering, clearly ill. "Hannah," Nathan exclaimed, rushing to her side. "What happened?" "Just a chill," she managed between chattering teeth. "Couldn't get the fire started again. Too weak." Nathan immediately set about building a fire, his experienced hands quickly coaxing flames from the kindling. Once the fire was blazing, he turned his attention back to Hannah, feeling her forehead and finding it burning with fever despite her chills. "I'm getting Dr. Wilson," he said firmly, tucking the blankets more securely around her. Hannah's weak protest was ignored as Nathan plowed his way through the snow to the doctor's house. Dr. Wilson returned with him immediately, his medical bag in hand. After a thorough examination, the doctor's diagnosis was pneumonia, likely brought on by a combination of exhaustion and exposure to the cold. "She's been working too hard," he told Nathan privately. Teaching all day, adult literacy classes in the evenings, and wedding preparations on top of it all. Her body was susceptible to illness. The doctor prescribed bed rest, warm broth, and various medicines from his bag. "She'll need constant care for at least a week," he warned Nathan. "Pneumonia is nothing to trifle with. I'll stay with her," Nathan said immediately. Dr. Wilson raised an eyebrow. "That wouldn't be proper, son, engaged or not." "Then we'll need a chaperone," Nathan replied stubbornly, "but I'm not leaving her, Mrs. Wilson was summoned and agreed to stay at the cottage as well, taking the small guest room while Nathan slept on a pallet by the fire in the parlor. Between them, they provided round-the-clock care for Hannah, whose condition worsened before it began to improve. For 3 days, Hannah's fever raged and she drifted in and out of consciousness. Nathan sat by her bedside for hours, bathing her forehead with cool cloths, helping her sip broth or medicine when she was lucid, and simply holding her hand when she wasn't. In her delirium, she sometimes called out for him, and he would reassure her that he was there, that he wasn't going anywhere. On the 4th night, as Nathan dozed in the chair beside her bed, Hannah's fever finally broke. She awoke to find him there, his head resting on the edge of her mattress, his hand still holding hers even in sleep. The tenderness of the sight brought tears to her eyes. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice hoarse from days of coughing. He stirred immediately, his eyes flying open to find her watching him. "Hannah, how do you feel?" "Weak," she admitted, "but better. The fever's gone." Relief washed over Nathan's face. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a fervent kiss to her palm. "You had me worried, Miss Fletcher." "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to frighten you." "Just don't do it again," he replied, his light tone belied by the residual fear in his eyes. "I can't lose you, Hannah. I've only just found you." She squeezed his hand weakly. "You won't lose me. I plan to be Mrs. Nathan Calloway for a very long time." Nathan's smile was radiant as he leaned forward to place a gentle kiss on her forehead. "Good, because I plan to be your husband for even longer." Hannah's recovery was steady but slow. She insisted on returning to teaching as soon as she could stand without assistance, though Dr. Wilson recommended she reduce her workload by temporarily suspending the adult literacy classes. Nathan, torn between his responsibilities at the ranch and his desire to be near Hannah, worked out a compromise where he would spend 3 days in town and 4 at the ranch each week until the wedding. As winter gradually yielded to spring, bringing with it the first tender shoots of green and early blossoms, wedding preparations accelerated. The entire town seemed involved in ensuring that the event would be memorable. The women organized sewing circles to help Hannah create her wedding dress. The men offered to build extra tables and benches for the reception. And the children prepared a special musical performance under the direction of Emily Wilson. In mid-April, just 2 weeks before the wedding, Nathan arrived at Hannah's cottage with unexpected news. "The mare's gone into labor," he announced excitedly. "Would you like to come see? It's your first foal as a rancher's wife, almost wife," he amended with a grin. Hannah didn't hesitate. "Let me get my coat." They rode out to the ranch together on Nathan's horse, arriving just as the sun was setting. In the barn, the chestnut mare was lying on a thick bed of straw, her sides heaving with contractions. Nathan's foreman, Jim, was already attending her. "Just started about an hour ago," Jim reported. "Everything looks normal so far." Hannah watched in fascination as the mare labored, Nathan explaining the process in low, calm tones. When the foal finally emerged, a leggy colt with a white star on his forehead, Hannah gasped in wonder. "He's beautiful," she breathed as the mare began to clean her newborn. "He's strong," Nathan observed approvingly. "Good bloodlines showing already." They stayed in the barn until the colt was standing on wobbly legs and nursing, Hannah's face alight with the miracle they had witnessed. As they finally left the new mother and baby to bond in peace, Nathan slipped his arm around Hannah's waist. "Welcome to ranching life, Miss Fletcher," he said softly. "Days of hard work punctuated by moments of pure wonder." Hannah leaned into his embrace. "I can't think of anything I'd rather do or anyone I'd rather do it with." As they walked toward the house under a canopy of stars, Nathan suddenly stopped and turned to face her. "I've been waiting for the right moment to tell you something," he said, his expression serious. "I've made some decisions about our ranch. Hannah tilted her head questioningly. "I've spoken with the bank about expanding our operation. We're buying the adjacent property to the East Old Man Henderson's place. He's moving to Kansas to live with his daughter, and the land's good. It will nearly double our acreage." Hannah's eyes widened. "Nathan, that's a significant investment. Are you sure?" "I am," he replied confidently, "but there's more. I've been talking with Tom Wilson about establishing a proper school on the ranch for the children of our workers and neighboring ranches. They currently have to travel too far to reach the town school, and many don't attend regularly as a result. A ranch school." Hannah repeated, beginning to understand where he was heading. Nathan nodded, watching her reaction carefully. "With a proper teacher, someone who believes every child deserves education, regardless of circumstance." A slow smile spread across Hannah's face. "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Calloway?" "I'm offering you a purpose," he corrected gently. "I know how much teaching means to you, Hannah. I would never ask you to give it up entirely. This way you can be a rancher's wife and still be the teacher you were born to be." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I've thought of nothing but your happiness since the day I pulled you from that fire," Nathan admitted. "I want our marriage to be a partnership in every sense. Your dreams matter as much as mine." Hannah threw her arms around his neck, overwhelming emotion making speech impossible for a moment. When she finally found her voice, it was thick with tears of joy. "I love you, Nathan Calloway, more than I ever thought possible. And I love you, Hannah Fletcher." "Soon to be Hannah Calloway," he replied, sealing the promise with a kiss that spoke of all the years of happiness that lay ahead. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, as if nature itself approved of the union about to take place. The church in Republic was decorated with wildflowers gathered by Hannah's students, and nearly every resident of the town and surrounding countryside had turned out for the occasion. Nathan stood at the altar in a new suit ordered from St. Louis, his normally unruly hair tamed for the occasion, his face a mixture of nervousness and undisguised joy. Beside him stood Tom Wilson as best man, offering quiet words of encouragement as they awaited the bride's arrival, when the church doors opened and Hannah appeared on the arm of Dr. Wilson, who had offered to give her away in the absence of her own father. A collective murmur of appreciation swept through the congregation. Her dress, a creation of ivory satin and delicate lace, had been a labor of love from the women of Republic. Her auburn hair was arranged in an elegant style adorned with tiny white flowers, and she carried a bouquet of spring blooms tied with satin ribbons. But it was her face that captivated Nathan, radiant with happiness, her green eyes fixed on him as though he were the only person in the room. As she moved slowly down the aisle toward him, Nathan felt his heart might burst with love and gratitude. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises that acknowledged the unusual beginning of their relationship and looked forward to the future they would build together. "Hannah," Nathan said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. "From the moment I heard your voice through the flames, my life has been illuminated by your presence. I promise to cherish you, to respect your dreams as equal to my own, to walk beside you rather than ahead or behind, and to love you with my whole heart for all the days we are granted together." Hannah, her eyes glistening with tears, replied with equal fervor. "Nathan, You ran into fire to save me when you didn't even know my name. Every day since has proven that your courage is matched by your kindness, your integrity, and your capacity for love. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your dreams while pursuing my own, to face whatever challenges arise with the same bravery you showed that night, and to love you completely and forever. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan's kiss was tender but thorough, drawing good-natured cheers from the congregation. As they turned to face their friends and neighbors as Mr. and Mrs. Calloway for the first time, both were nearly overcome by the journey that had brought them to this moment. The celebration that followed at the schoolhouse grounds was joyous and lively. Tables laden with food prepared by the women of the town, music provided by a small band from Springfield, and dancing that continued well into the evening made it an event that would be talked about in Republic for years to come. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the festivities, Nathan pulled his bride aside for a moment of quiet amidst the celebration. "Happy Mrs. Calloway?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Deliriously so, Mr. Calloway," Hannah replied, raising her face for his kiss. "I have something for you," Nathan said when they parted. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. "A wedding gift." Hannah opened the pouch and gasped as a delicate gold locket fell into her palm. Opening it, she found a tiny painting of the two of them on one side, a miniature commissioned from an artist in Springfield, and an inscription on the other. "Through fire to love." "Oh, Nathan," she whispered, deeply touched. "It's perfect." "To remind us of how our story began," he said, helping her fasten the locket around her neck. "And that whatever flames life throws our way, we'll face them together." Hannah's hand came up to touch the locket, now resting against her heart. "I have something for you too," she said, a hint of mischief in her smile. "Though it's not something I can give you here." Nathan's eyebrows rose in question, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Then perhaps it's time we made our farewells and headed home, Mrs. Calloway." They departed amid cheers and well wishes, riding in a flower-decked wagon to the ranch that would now be their shared home. As they drove away from town, Hannah leaned against her husband's shoulder, contentment washing over her. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "what might have happened if there had been no fire that night?" Nathan considered this for a moment, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "I believe we would have found each other somehow," he said finally. "But I'm grateful for the fire, terrible as it was. It brought me to you without delay." Hannah nodded against his shoulder. "From flames to forever," she murmured. "Forever," Nathan agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head as they continued toward home and the new life that awaited them. 5 years later, Nathan and Hannah Calloway stood on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching their children play in the late afternoon sunshine. 4-year-old James, named for Nathan's father, was attempting to teach his 2-year-old sister Catherine how to throw a ball, with limited success. The sound of their laughter carried on the spring breeze, mingling with the distant lowing of cattle and the gentle notes of a piano being played inside the house. The Calloway Ranch had prospered beyond their initial hopes. The purchase of the Henderson property had indeed been the first of several expansions, and they now ran one of the most successful cattle operations in the county, with a growing reputation for quality quarter horses as well. The ranch school Hannah had established had 16 regular students, children of ranch hands and neighboring families who received an education equal to what they might have found in any town. "Mama, Papa, look." James called excitedly, pointing to the road where a rider was approaching at a leisurely pace. Nathan shaded his eyes against the setting sun. "It's Tom," he identified the visitor, waving in greeting. Tom Wilson, now the town doctor following his father's semi-retirement, rode into the ranch yard and dismounted. "Evening, Calloways," he called cheerfully, accepting the enthusiastic welcomes from James and Catherine, who had abandoned their ball game to greet their honorary uncle. "Perfect timing," Hannah said warmly. Dinner's nearly ready, and there's plenty to share." Tom followed them into the house, where the delicious aromas of roast beef and fresh bread filled the air. A young woman rose from the piano bench as they entered. Julia Parker, Mrs. Parker's niece, who helped with the children and the house while Hannah divided her time between teaching and ranching responsibilities. "Dr. Wilson," Julia greeted him with a blush that didn't escape Hannah's notice. "How nice to see you again, Miss Parker," Tom replied with equal warmth. "That was beautiful playing. Chopin, wasn't it?" "Yes," Julia confirmed, surprised and pleased by his recognition. "Mrs. Calloway has been teaching me." As Julia excused herself to help finish preparing dinner, Hannah exchanged a knowing glance with Nathan. Tom's increasingly frequent visits to the ranch had coincided suspiciously with Julia's arrival 6 months earlier. Over dinner, conversation flowed easily among the adults, interrupted occasionally by the children's contributions. Tom shared news from town, including the planned expansion of the church and the arrival of a new family who had purchased the old Miller place. "And the most interesting news," Tom added, buttering a slice of bread, "is that they're finally putting up a proper monument in the town square to commemorate the Great Fire of '76. "After all this time?" Nathan asked, surprised. Tom nodded. "Mayor Ellis says it's to honor the town's resilience and growth since then. The new general store is twice the size of the old one, the population has nearly doubled, and Republic is becoming known throughout the state as a progressive community with excellent educational opportunities." He winked at Hannah. "Wonder where that reputation came from?" Hannah smiled modestly. "Many people have contributed to Republic's growth, not just me." "True, but it started with you," Tom insisted. "Your methods at the town school set a standard that continues even with the new teacher. And now your ranch school is being talked about as far away as Kansas City." Nathan reached for Hannah's hand under the table, squeezing it gently. "We've all come a long way since that night," he said quietly. Later, after Tom had departed with a rather lingering farewell to Julia, the children had been tucked into bed with stories and kisses, and Julia had retired to her room in the east wing. Nathan and Hannah stood together on the porch once more, enjoying the peaceful end to the day. "Happy, Mrs. Calloway?" Nathan asked, echoing the question he had asked her on their wedding day and many times since. Hannah leaned into his embrace, her head resting against his chest where she could hear the steady beat of his heart. "Completely, Mr. Calloway." They stood in comfortable silence for a few moments before Hannah spoke again. "I was thinking about what Tom said about the monument to the fire." Nathan prompted, his chin resting on top of her head. "It seems fitting, doesn't it? To commemorate something that caused such destruction but ultimately led to renewal and growth. For the town and for us," Nathan nodded. "From the ashes, something beautiful arose." "Like a phoenix," Hannah murmured. Nathan turned her in his arms so he could see her face in the soft glow spilling from the house windows. At 30, Hannah was even more beautiful than she had been at 25, motherhood and happiness having added a depth to her beauty that took his breath away. "I've been thinking," he said, tracing the line of her jaw with his finger. "Perhaps it's time we took that trip to San Francisco we've been talking about. Tom's mother could look after the children, Julia can manage the house, and Jim has proven he can handle the ranch for a few weeks." Hannah's eyes lit up. "Truly, I would love that." "Consider it an anniversary gift," Nathan said. 5 years of marriage deserves a special celebration, don't you think?" Hannah's answer was a kiss that held all the passion and tenderness of their years together, and the promise of many more to come. As they finally turned to go inside, arm in arm, a shooting star blazed briefly across the night sky, a fleeting, beautiful light that reminded them both of the fire that had brought them together and the love that continued to illuminate their lives. In the years that followed, the story of Nathan and Hannah Calloway became something of a legend in Republic and the surrounding areas of Greene County. The tale of the brave cowboy who ran into a burning building to save a beautiful stranger only to fall in love with her, was told and retold, embellished in some versions but essentially true at its heart. The Calloway Ranch prospered and expanded further, becoming one of the most successful operations in Missouri. Their school gained such a reputation for excellence that families began moving to the area specifically to enroll their children, and Hannah eventually hired 2 additional teachers to meet the demand. James and Catherine were joined by a brother, Robert, and the 3 Calloway children grew up surrounded by love, learning, and the values their parents instilled in them: courage, compassion, and the importance of education. Nathan and Hannah's marriage remained a partnership in every sense, each supporting the other's dreams and working together to build something meaningful. They faced challenges, as all couples do: droughts that threatened the ranch, illnesses, the normal conflicts that arise in any relationship, but they faced them together, remembering always the fire that had forged their bond. And on their porch on summer evenings, long after their children were grown with families of their own, Nathan would still ask, "Happy, Mrs. Calloway?" And Hannah would still answer with absolute truth, "Completely, Mr. Calloway." For the fire that had nearly claimed her life had instead given her everything she had ever wanted: a purpose, a family, a home, and a love that burned bright and true until the end of their days.